Hey guys, and welcome to Coastal Oak Ranch. Today we're going to be talking about how to properly mount a scope on your favorite rifle. If that sounds like something you might be interested in, stick around and we'll see you on the ranch. Hey, what's up guys, and welcome to Coastal Oak Ranch. Today I'm going to be working on my new 1022 rifle. We're going to be mounting the Vortex scope we got for it. All right, so excuse my messy garage. Working on this guy right now. Just got this rail mounted on here, so we're going to get this finished up. I got one screw left to put in there, but basically when you get the 1022, they come with these little plugs. I don't know if you can see that plug the holes where this rail can mount, and this rail should be included with your 1022. So this is what we're going to do the actual mount. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get the last screw in there, just put a little bit of blue Loctite on these guys, tighten them down, and make sure it doesn't loosen up on you as you go. All right, so I got these all tightened up here. They're all good to go. There's just 4 screws. They're flat heads. They're kind of a thin little slot there, so make sure you have a screwdriver with a thin enough tip on it. I'm using this Husky 5/16 or 3/16 flathead that came in a kit, so that seemed to just fit in there just right. So now we're going to mount the rings up. I'm using these Warne rings. These are for a 1-inch scope tube. So this is what I'm going to mount on there. Same thing with these. We're going to use a little blue Loctite to make sure nothing loosens up on us. I'll probably set them as wide as I can. We're going to check our scope. Just put the bottoms of the ring on, check our scope seating so we can get a good view picture from the back of the scope. The scope we're going to be mounting is going to be this Vortex Diamondback. It's a Rimfire rifle scope, so it's set up for Rimfire stuff. So it's a 2-7. It's just got a standard reticle in there, and it's actually for Rimfire, so it should work pretty well for what we need it to. So we'll get this all opened up, and then I'll show you guys how those rings go on. All right, so here's those rings. You can see you got 2 screws here. It does come with the little Torx head to use to tighten those down. I'll use this part for attaching it to the rail, but when I do the scope, I have a torque driver that I'm going to use for that. So these I'll probably just get as tight as I can, and then when we come to torque the scope tube down, we don't want to go too tight. It's going to have probably have a spec for us inside that scope package on what we should tighten that to. So I'm going to go ahead and pull these screws out, get a little blue Loctite on there first, and then go ahead and mount them up here on the rail. Probably do one here and one on the end here, just to try and spread it out and give it the widest stance possible, so it doesn't move around on us. So all right, so I got my blue Loctite in there on these bottom 2 screws. So now I'm just going to go ahead and mount these on the rail. I'm just going to bring this over the top like this, line up our little slot, and then I'm just going to tighten these screws down as snug as I feel comfortable. I had to keep them from moving, and once we have the Loctite on there, they shouldn't back out on us at all. Okay, so I got both of my rings mounted on here now. They're nice and solid. We Loctited the 2 screws on this side. Make sure those don't back up if we have any vibration with the 22. probably won't be too big of a deal, but you never know. So I always like to Loctite everything on the with some blue Loctite, just so it doesn't back out from vibration. So I'll go ahead and set the scope in here. We'll slide it back and forth to get the right eye relief. I'll mark it, and that way we know where we need to set our scope when we go to tighten the rings down, and we'll pick it up after that step. Okay, so now I have my upper rings off on here, so I'm going to go ahead and set my scope in here, and then we can set our eye relief. So this is the Vortex Diamondback, comes with a little cleaning cloth. This is probably going to give us our torque settings here. So to properly mount the rifle scope, we highly recommend using an inch-pound torque screwdriver. Do not exceed 18 inch-pounds. So that's our setting there, 18 inch-pounds. So we don't want to go over that. There's also a small instruction manual in here. We'll probably use that when we're zeroing the scope and doing a bore sight on that. So we'll look in there and see exactly how to make our adjustments. For now, we will get this plastic open here. There we go. There's our scope. We'll take our caps off here, and that's what we're using. So it's variable power, 2 to 7. That should be plenty for a rimfire. And then our adjustments are going to be under here for this is going to be our elevation and our windage. So it is a 2 to 7 by 35, and this is their Diamondback line. So it's not top of the line, but it's not too bad either. So there's a look at what the reticle looks like. I don't know if you can see that on camera or not. It's a little tough to get it to focus. But yeah, so we'll go ahead and set our eye relief and see where we stand. All right, so we got our scope just sitting in our rings here. The idea of this step is so when you mount this rifle, when you're in your shooting position, there's an optimal distance for your eye to be from the back glass right here, so you get a full picture. So we want to be right in the middle of that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold the rifle, and then I'm going to slide this either forward or backward until I find the right location. And what I usually do is then I just go up on the edge right here where it's going to be covered anyways, and make a little tiny scratch with a screwdriver, just so I know where that's going to line up when we come back. And that's how we set our eye relief on this. So go ahead and take this rifle. I'm going to hold it so it's comfortable, just like I would shoot normally, and then I'm going to slide this so I get a good view picture. So right there, and you can move in and out, and you'll see the outside of the scope image close in on you. It'll be black, and it'll kind of close in and then get big and close in. So you want to be right in the middle of that range when you're most comfortable shooting. That way, if you're a little forward or a little backward, it won't matter too much. So I'm thinking right about there, it seems pretty good for me. So I think that's where we're going to mark it at. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take my little screwdriver, and some people might not want to do this. You might want to use a little Sharpie or something. For me, not too big of a deal. And I'm just going to make a small scratch in the scope there. So that way I know that lines up right with the edge of this back mount here. So you can, I don't know if you can see that on camera or not, the little scratch I made, but it's very, very small. You'll never even notice it. So what we're going to do now is we're going to take our scope off of here, and then we're going to get our I can't remember the exact name for it. It's a honing bar basically, and we're going to run that through these mounts. These are pretty cheap mounts, so we're going to try and even them out so they get a nice smooth grip on the whole surface. Once again, probably not that important on a 22 rifle. If this was a more high-powered rifle, and you have a lot of shock when you're firing it, the scope has a tendency to move in the mounts. The 22, probably not going to happen so much, but I still like to do it the right way. So we're going to get this thing honed out and ready to go so we can mount our scope. All right, so this is the kit I have for this reminded me of the name. This is for lapping the rings. This is what they call us, lapping the rings. So this is the kit I bought for lapping the rings. It's made by Wheeler Engineering. But basically what the kit comes with is these bars. So if you do have adjustable rings, you can use these. They go in the front ring and the back ring, and you can align them. So these the tips on the two, and you align your rings, should point to each other like that, so you can get them to basically touch. On a Picatinny style ring, we're not going to have much adjustment on there, so there's not really much we can do if they're not pointing at each other, so we're probably going to skip this step. If you're doing this on a hunting rifle, you'd want to install these first and try and get those tips adjusted so they're pointing at each other, so they're not crooked like this. You'd want them so they're touching right at the tip. That's how you make sure your rings are in a perfect line. So on this one, we don't really have that option since it's a Picatinny style rail. The rings kind of fall where they'll fall. There are two different sets in here, so these are for the 1-inch scope, which is what we have, same thing as these guys, and then there's also the guys for the 30mm scope. So we're going to be using the 1-inch bar here. It comes with a little handle to install and actually move the bar back and forth and rotate it. I'll show you how that works to actually lap the rings. And then there's this little bit of compound here. It's a 220 grit compound that you stick in there to lap back and forth. That actually wears the rings down a little bit. You want to be careful when you do this. If you do it too much, you'll actually make it so your scope won't clamp in there tightly. So less is more kind of on this, but to get them kind of smoothed out, especially these ones, they kind of seem like they have a painted finish on there that's a little uneven. So we're going to try and even some of that out and see if we can get a little more contact with the scope. So we'll take this over there and get started. All right, so we're back over here at the bench. I'm just going to take my bar here and set it down in here. We're going to get the handle installed. That just screws in just like that. And what we're going to do here is get a little bit of the compound here, so you can kind of see what that looks like. You're just going to take a little bit on your finger, and we want very thin amounts because we're not trying to have really much of a if you put too much in there, it'll build up a little bit of a layer and you won't be sitting flush. So we just want to put just enough to just, I mean, I barely have any on my finger there, and all we're doing is just rubbing this on the inside of the ring here on the lower part. Then what we're going to do is go ahead and set our bar in the rings there. And now I'm going to take my upper mounts and I'm going to do the same thing. Just put a thin layer and then set them on top. And I'll show you how I tighten these guys down here. So it's a little too much. Okay, so when you install the upper ring, you're going to want to make sure that your gap in between the lower and upper ring is even on both sides. So if you hold it with your fingers there, kind of look and see that your gap here, let me bring you over here, that your gap here and your gap over here are roughly even. If you have it all off to one side, then when you lap, it's going to be all crooked, and you want them to be even. So once you have those even out, just run your screws down until they bottom out. Nothing crazy, just finger tight. Go. Okay. Once you have these guys started, then you just give them a little 8th turn once they've bottomed out there. So just a little 8th turn. And at this point, we haven't put any Loctite on or anything like that. You're just going to want to make sure that you can still move the bar. So we're good there. We're going to go ahead and do the other side. Same thing, just a little bit of compound right there. Doesn't take much. So we're going to go ahead and adjust these guys down here until they barely touch. Just make sure we're pretty even on both sides. Hold it with your fingers. They bottom out. Okay, there we go. Just gonna give them just a little turn more, just to put a little pressure on the rings. And not so much that I can't move that bar back and forth. Okay, so we're all in there. We have our lapping compound in there. Now what we're gonna do is we're gonna rotate this back and forth and move it around. And what this is gonna do is it's going to conform those rings and wear down the high spots along this bar. So you can see the bar actually takes the finish off a little bit too. And you'll notice it gets looser as you go. So these ones are pretty bad. So on a good set of rings, you might not even need this much, what I've just done. But on these guys, they are a cheaper set of rings. So I am gonna, once it loosens up, I am just gonna give it another little bit of a turn here before I check them. If you wanted to at this point, you could open this back up, take a look at them, see what you're looking like. But basically we wanna make sure that we don't close that gap by lapping these things. Because if we close that gap, when we go to mount our scope, the scope's gonna be loose in there. So we wanna make sure that we have a gap there still so we can torque the scope down properly. So there we go. So trying to stay nice and even, rotating back and forth so you get all the surfaces there. There you go, you can see it's loosened up on me again. So what I'm gonna do at this point is I'm going to go ahead and pull the upper mounts off and see what we're looking like. So we'll go ahead and unscrew these guys real quick. Let's just take a look at this first one and see if we're even getting close here. So a little paper towel, clean off your rubbing compound so you can see what you're looking at. And basically you're looking for undisturbed finish that's left in there. If it's all got sanding marks on it, then you know that entire ring is making contact there. And we're not looking for the whole thing if they're cheap rings, because if we go too much, we know we're gonna have problems. So I'm just gonna pull these screws out here. We're gonna take a look. It may be hard to see on camera, but you can see where we've lapped, and you can see those two shiny spots, one right here and one kind of right here. So those areas haven't really been touched by the compound yet, but you know what, this is looking pretty good. We have pretty good even coverage on this one, all the way across. That looks like it's been etched. So we can assume that we're making really good contact with a 1-inch cylinder right here. So I'd say this looks pretty good. So I'm gonna go ahead and pull the back one, see if it looks the same, and then we're gonna check the bottoms as well and see if we're ready to go ahead and mount our scope. All right, so we just pulled those off and cleaned them off, and you can see here we have pretty good coverage on the back side here. This front one looks like it's just a little bit in the front, and then on the rear one here. And one thing to mention, when you take the uppers off, make sure that you keep them oriented in the same direction and in the same position. So front one facing forward still. So I just took this guy off just like this and set it right down here. So we want to make sure we keep those lined up so everything's mating up together in the same way. But on this rear one, it's hard to see here, but it didn't really etch much in the middle. It looks like it's just on the edges here. So I think I need to do a little bit more lapping. I'm gonna put these back on and do one more run on it, and then check them again and see how we're looking. All right, we just finished off the second round of lapping, so we're gonna go ahead and pull these off, clean them up, and take a look at them and see what they look like. Okay, just finished up the second round of lapping. So you can see here, we have a lot more coverage on this front one now, where it was just in this little area in the front. Now we have it covering most of the ring there. I'd say once you get to about 75 to 80% of coverage on there, you're in pretty good shape. So on this one, you can see we have almost full coverage. You can kind of see where it's been scuffed up on that finish there. The front ring, obviously, we're still looking good. That one was good before. And then the rear ring now, we have pretty much full coverage as well, where you can see where that lapping compound has done its job. So we got these all cleaned up. We're gonna go ahead and get our scope in here, line up our mark we used for setting our eye relief, and then we're gonna level the scope. So I'll show you how to do that next. All right, so just wanted to show you guys how these little guys work. So if you did have adjustable rings. These are on a Picatinny mount, so they're lined up pretty straight already, but these ones look pretty good. So basically set both of these in here and just make sure that that tip meets up with the other tip. If they were adjustable and they were a little off, you would try and twist the rings one way or the other to get those to line up. So you want those perfectly aligned as best you can with whatever little bit of adjustment you have. With this style, don't really have much adjustment, but it looks like we're doing pretty good there. So we're just gonna run with it. Okay, so what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna set up my leveling equipment on here. I have a couple levels that we're gonna use to make sure that we get our reticle level. There is a kit made by Wheeler that I'm gonna use. There is an old school way of doing this where you basically hang a plumb bob off the wall, look through the scope, and align the vertical reticle with that plumb bob, so you're, you know, vertical to earth. That's actually probably the most accurate way to do it, but it takes a little bit more setup, and you kind of have to be holding the rifle just right and stuff like that. So this is the way I prefer to do it. I'll show you guys how this works. It's a pretty cool kit, and we'll get this thing mounted up. Okay, so this is the kit we're going to be using. Like I said, sorry, it's a little dirty. This is made by Wheeler Engineering. It is called the Professional Reticle Leveling System. So you can see there. Basically, it comes with 2 levels in this thing. So we're going to use this one to attach to the barrel and level, and this one to set on top of the scope to level. But to set this one so it is level with the rest of the gun, what I do is I take this little guy here and I'm going to set it on my back Picatinny rail, and I'm going to get the gun level to start with. So that's going to give me my baseline there. So right now, this Picatinny rail is level. Now on this gun, is that perfectly level? Probably not, but it's going to get us in the ballpark and get us close enough. At this point, we're going to use this. This is going to attach on the front of our barrel up here, and then we're going to use this adjustment knob until we match this level back here. So we're going to hold the gun perfectly level, get this thing mounted on the barrel, and then we should be able to set level on the front there. So that just opens up like that. We're going to go ahead and put this guy here, snug it down on our barrel, and we're going to make sure we're still sitting level back there. And I'm going to adjust this guy till we're pretty close to level. There we go. Okay, so I'm going to adjust my gun back so I get my bubble right in the middle there. We're just going to get that guy right in the middle. This is the one on our Picatinny rail. Oh, I don't have a gun vise for this. I'm just using a shooting stand here. So it's a little touchy. Okay, there we go. So we're sitting right in the middle. Now we're going to adjust this knob until this one is right in the middle. Other way. Okay. There we go. So we're sitting level there, and we are sitting level here. So we know that this level is level to our Picatinny rail now. So once I remove this and put the scope on it and we level our scope, we should be able to set this right on top of the elevation adjustment knob there and level our scope to the gun. Okay, so I got my level on the front here. I'm gonna go ahead and line up my scope with that little mark that I made earlier for my eye relief. So I know that goes to the back of the back mount there. So there we go, we got that set there. Now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna get these guys all just started, just nice and loose, finger tight, with a little bit of blue Loctite, and then we're gonna come in with our torque screwdriver and torque these guys down once we get this thing leveled. So first things first, we'll get these guys set up here, we'll get a little blue Loctite in there and get going. Okay, so same idea here. We're gonna wanna get our gaps equal on both sides, then just finger tighten it down, literally just spinning this thing with my fingers like this, no pressure on this at all. And then we're gonna finish it off with the torque screwdriver once we're done. Okay, so we have our eye relief set. We have this thing in here loose so I can still rotate it slightly. And then we have our level set on the front here. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna get this front level set, then we're gonna set our other level up on top here, level that, and we'll be ready to torque down the scope. All right, so we're gonna go ahead and get this front level here. Just make sure we're still sitting level because I don't have a gun vise. Okay, we're sitting good there. So now what I'm gonna do is take this other level here and set this guy on top of our scope, and we're gonna see how level we look. We're a little off, so we're gonna go ahead and take our scope and just twist it ever so slightly, if I can, with one hand while I'm holding the camera. And we're gonna look at our back one. Okay, we need to adjust. I'm gonna need two hands to do this, so I'm gonna set the camera down. But basically what we're trying to do is, while this one is perfectly level, we wanna adjust our scope so this one is sitting right in the center. Okay, here we go. So let's get that guy perfectly centered. I'm just gonna support the gun here so I can hold it down. Then I'll use this hand to do my adjustment here. Level there. There we go. Okay, so we're matched up. They're both sitting level. We're looking good right there. Okay, so here you can see now we are sitting level on the front, and the top knob on our scope is also sitting level. So in theory, the top edge of this scope, the bottom portion of the scope, is perfectly level with the top of this Picatinny rail, which should mean our reticle is straight up and down and straight across. So we're gonna go ahead and get ready to torque these guys down, and then we'll be set to do bore sighting. All right, so here is the torque wrench we're gonna use to torque the screws down for that scope mount there, the scope rings. It comes with a bunch of different little bits here for all the different types. And then this is the actual torque wrench. So what you do is you pull this bottom portion out and twist it, and that line aligns with however many inch-pounds you need on this. So on this one, we need 18 inch-pounds, I believe, was the maximum. So I believe I'm still set on 18 inch-pounds, but we're gonna double check that and then get the right bit in here, and then we're gonna tighten them down in a cross pattern, kind of like you would do a car wheel, so everything tightens down evenly. Okay, so I just double checked the wrench. We are set at 18 inch-pounds. Right, we got the right size bit now, so I'm gonna just go ahead and set that in here. Basically what this is gonna do, it's got a little slip clutch in there, so once it reaches a certain torque, you'll feel it slip and click. So I'm just gonna double check my levels here. Everything still looks good. We're gonna check that one more time when we're all finished and make sure when we tighten anything down, the scope didn't move on us. But for now, I'm just gonna go ahead and pull this level off. And we're gonna start with the front one here. Doesn't really matter where you go. And we're just gonna start tightening this guy down. And these are still pretty far out. So what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna snug them up before I actually get the click here first. And then we will finish them off. So here we go. So now you'll see this thing will, there it goes. It just slipped on me and clicked. We're gonna go catty corner to that one, click, one next to it, click, and then cross back over, click. So we're at 18 inch-pounds on this front one. We're gonna do the same for the rear. All right, so here we go. Just get these kind of snug down to start here. And I'm still doing this in a cross pattern, just so we make sure everything's even. So first thing we're gonna do, we'll see it go there, click, do our next one, here, click, this side, click, and this side, click. Okay, so we should be fully torqued on there. Now what we're gonna do is put our level back up here, check it with our front level, and make sure everything's good to go. And just confirm that everything is right in the center, and we look perfect. We're dead center on both of them. Seems like the rings are making good contact, everything's torqued up, everything's Loctited. This thing should be ready to go. You should be able to you know, bang this thing around pretty good and not have any issues. So we're gonna go ahead and get ready to bore sight this gun, and then we will be ready to go shoot it and sight it in for real. All right, so one last thing we're gonna do before we go ahead and bore sight this thing is we're gonna go ahead and set our diopter, which is this little dial on the back of the scope here. Basically what this is doing is it's setting the focus for the reticle. Now everybody's eye is different, so it's going to be different for everybody, but basically the way you want to do this is you're going to point your scope at something blank, a blank white wall, blue sky with no clouds, something like that, and you're going to adjust this dial while you're looking through this to get the reticle as clear as possible. So the reticle being the little crosshairs inside the scope. One thing to mention when you are doing this, make sure that once you get it pretty close to where you think it's going to be, you're going to want to shut your eyes for a minute and open them back up and see if it's still clear. If it's not, make a slight adjustment, do the same thing, close your eyes, open them back up, because what will happen is if you're staring through this thing the whole time, your eye will actually make the adjustment for you and make that reticle clear, but it is straining your eye. So, and if you're pulling up to do a shot right away, it's going to take a second for that reticle to get clear for you. So you want to make sure that with a rested eye, with your eyes closed, and you open it right back up, that reticle is crisp for you. So you're going to do that adjustment and set that. Once that's set, you shouldn't have to touch that anymore. This is not to focus the target. This is for focus on the reticle only. So go ahead, I'm going to go ahead and do that real quick, get that set up, and then we're going to go ahead and put our laser bore sight on this thing so we can get this thing bore sighted. All right, so I just went ahead and got my diopter set off camera there. This is the bore sight I'm going to use, or the laser for the bore sighting that we're going to use. I believe it is called Sight-Rite laser bore sight. So basically there's a little stem that comes off of this, slides in the end of the barrel. There's a bunch of different O-rings in here for different calibers. This isn't the most accurate way. You can buy the individual laser sets that they're basically a spent shell casing with a laser pointer inside that shoot down the barrel. Those are going to give you the most accurate. This works pretty good. It gets you in the ballpark, and then once you're putting it on paper, when you go to the range, you can fine tune it there. So I'm going to get this opened up. We're going to find the right O-rings for 22 caliber, get this installed, and then we're going to go out. I'm probably going to do this at about 25 yards for this rifle, bore sighted in at 25 yards, and then I'll show you how to do that once we get there. All right, so this is the actual laser we're going to be using. It comes with two different stems here. So we're going to be using the larger stem. I believe the only thing this one's used for is like a 17 HMR, the smaller stem. So that is in the kit. So you can go all the way from a 17 HMR up to something 50 cal. So it does cover all the bases there. So we're going to screw this in, and then for our 22, these two little O-rings are going to be the O-rings we're using. And you can see these, the little ridges they sit in. The front ones are cut deeper. So I believe for the 22, we put them on the deep ones there, and then we're going to insert this into the end of the barrel and turn the laser on. What we're going to do now is just stick this guy down the barrel, and just nice and smooth so you don't run over those O-rings. You don't have to get too crazy with it. There we go. So that should be centered, and then we're going to flick the switch on, and that's going to be technically should be the center of our bore here. So what we're going to do is we're going to go out to 25 yards. We're going to shine this laser back in the garage here, and then I'm going to look through the scope and line the crosshairs up with that laser point using my adjustments under here. So on this particular scope, this is our elevation adjustment here, and that is our windage adjustment. So this is where we'll make our adjustments for the different locations. Should be a 1/4 MOA per click. So at about 100 yards, that's going to be about 1/4 inch per click. So we'll do our adjustments, put our caps back on, and we should be good to go. All right, so I'm out here at about 25 yards to that white wall in there. You can see my laser point on there. So what I'm going to do now is it's starting to rain on me a little bit, so I'm going to try and do this quick. But we're going to look through this scope and try and line that crosshair up with that red laser there. So I'll see if I can do this through the camera. All right, so as you can see here, we're pretty close. I just got to bring that thing right just a hair. So I'm going to come up here and make my adjustment there. Perfect. And then I'm going to bring it up just a little. that looks pretty stinking good right there. I think that's about as good as we're gonna get for a bore sighting. So we're gonna put the caps back on this thing, and then we will fine tune it at the range. But as far as the adjustments go on this, we were almost dead on right off the start, so we probably would have been on paper at 100 yards, no problem. So we'll get this thing out to the range and get it sighted in for our final sight-in, and we should be good to go. All right, guys, that's going to do it for the video today. Thanks for sticking around. If you feel like you learned something or if you enjoyed the video, please be sure to leave a like or comment down below. If you want to follow along with the rest of this this setup here, we're going to go out to the range and get this thing all sighted in. So make sure you subscribe if you want to stick around for that, and we'll see you next time on the ranch.